Welcome to Through the Birds. This is a campaign I've started to focus on learning about the world through birds that inhabit different areas. Each week we're going to be looking at a different country and learning about birds that reside there. I've always had a fascination with birds, and I think it's really interesting to see how birds influence the culture and areas they're from. Since we're going to be doing this together, I figure we make these videos more casual in nature as I just share with you what I found, and feel free to leave any comments or suggestions for the next country for next week in the comments. This week we've started with France, and I think it's only right to start with the national bird. The national bird in France is the Gallic rooster. This bird has been associated with France for a long time, dating all the way back to the Middle Ages. During the Middle Ages, the rooster was seen as a religious symbol and signified hope and faith. The royal family effigy often tied this bird through coins and engravings, since these birds stood for the country of France. So they were always associated with the rooster from a very early period of time. The symbol of the rooster really took over during the Renaissance, however, as it became more associated with the emerging nation of France. And then when Napoleon took away the French Republic, he also took away the symbol of the rooster. He didn't think that it was powerful enough, and he did not see this as a symbol of his own empire. Instead, he replaced the rooster with an eagle. However, during the French Revolution of 1830, the rooster was reinstated as the national image. At the time, the Duke of Orleans signed an order to produce many items with the rooster symbol, such as flags and uniform buttons on the National Guard. And during the First World War, the Gallic rooster became a sense of pride of the country's resistance and bravery. The rooster summed up the country's rise from its peasant's origin into a full-fledged unified country. And it's also important to note that I found throughout the week is that birds in France have become a social symbol and a social status reflection, as dating back to medieval periods, birds have been part of the diets for generations, where a majority of the diets consisted of poultry and birds. A diverse variety of bird remains have been found in places like Boves Castle. Poultry was a large part of diets for higher social members during the medieval times, where they would eat chickens, peafowl, geese, rock doves, and domestic ducks. And chicken was obviously the most numerous of these birds. But throughout different parts of France, you would see different birds be taken and used for dietary reasons. And that leads into the first bird that I found really interesting in my research this week. Is called the Ortolan buntling. The Ortolan buntling is a tiny little bird that is typically no bigger than a hand and sports an earthy brown color with a yellowish-gray head. This bird has become a symbol of the elite in the country because of its use in the Roman times. The Ortolan buntlings were caught and drowned in a form of brandy and then plucked and roasted for human consumption. So these birds have been eaten for a long time, since the Roman times, and the way they were eaten was by being swallowed whole, bone and all, by people to then consume and eat. And there was a ritual behind eating as well, where the person consuming the bird would put a napkin over their head to, quote, hide the sin from God. The practice has since been under scrutiny, as the ortolan population in France has been labeled endangered. There are too many people hunting these birds for consumption that the population started dropping since 1980. And obviously it's been under scrutiny as people find it inhumane. But French chefs claim that it is a highly regarded culinary tradition, So there are people in France who still wish that this was allowed. France has banned the hunting and trapping of these birds as they have been endangered in France, and it has greatly increased the bird's chance of surviving climate change. The birds are not listed as endangered as the world as a whole because these birds are found in many places throughout Europe and Asia. France is the only one that I'm aware of that would be catching and cooking these birds, so the population in France plummeted. Another bird that I found really interesting in this week's search was the northern lapwing. These birds have been under watch from the government as they have also had to step in and stop hunters from trapping them. These birds are shorebirds and are primarily black and white, but have some colorful plumage that reflects a glossy green in perfect lighting. These birds are also rounded and have floppier movement as they fly with steep dives as well. In this video, you can see how they move around really sporadically and more floppily, and they also dive pretty far down as they move. The government has put a ban on trapping these birds in cages or nets, as these are dangerously close to being labeled as endangered birds throughout the world, not just in France. And some conservationists have started to look into whether the government is actually enforcing these laws. It's been observed that some trappers are trapping these birds, whether on accident or on purpose. It's not really known. And it has led to issues of the bird survival chances. Even if these birds are released and they are caught, there's a chance that it leads to complications later on down the line with stress and the fear of being caught again, and trauma, and it would just be better off to prevent catching any of these birds at all. Conservationists want France to enforce the laws that they set up and solve this problem before the species become endangered, which is completely understandable. I think it's really interesting this week that France, in my search, has been home to some problems with multiple different birds, not even just these two. You can see here that the common blackbird, the Eurasian skylark, European golden plover, and the thrush also had to be illegal to hunt in France because of how many trappers are using nets and cages to catch birds, and cause issues for the bird population in France. I think it's crucial that France would enforce these laws that they are making for preservation and conservation of these birds, because even though something like the Ortolan buntling is around in other countries, it's still important that these birds are native to your country as a whole, and if they're being harmed, that should be something taken into effect and have multiple different outlets to stop, as it's really important. We don't want birds to become extinct because of careless behavior. I think it'll be really interesting going forward to see how other countries I think it's going to be really interesting going forwards in my research with other countries about how they handle conservation, and if there are other countries that have similar issues with creating laws for conservation but not following through on them. I think that is something I am interested to look forward to learning about. If you want to see me cover a specific country's birds, let me know in the comments below, and I will do my best to cover whatever you guys want to see, because I am very interested in learning about any and all country and the birds that reside there. It's a really interesting thing for me to find out about the world through different birds, as I love them. I think it's a really interesting topic to see how bird conservation and preservation is handled throughout the world, and how birds influence culture in other places. I think it's a really niche topic to look specifically at birds and see how they impact the people, the food, the religious symbols, or anything along that nature. So if you guys have any ideas of where you guys want to see me go next, please leave a comment below, and thank you for watching.